Welcome to Higher Learning. I am your host, Oz Rashid. This is more than just a podcast. It's a front row seat to how elite leaders build the most iconic of teams. The kind of leaders who spot potential that others overlook, who build cultures people don't want to leave, who set the bar, then raise it. Work and how we work is evolving at a rapid pace like no time in history. Our guests will give you insights on how to stay out in front when it comes to all things talent, leadership, management, artificial intelligence, and developing the skills that actually matter. Whether you're a founder, hiring manager, or just obsessed with building teams the right way, this is your spot. If it's your first time here, welcome. Hit that subscribe button, drop a rating, tell a friend who gets it. To our longtime listeners, we appreciate you. Thanks for the continued support. Now, let's get into it. Today, we are joined by a very special guest. We're joined by Dr. Oscar Benavidez, a powerhouse at the intersection of medicine, leadership, and innovation. He's the Chief Operating Officer for the Congenital Cardiac Program at Mass General Brigham's Heart and Vascular Institute, where he oversees strategy and operations across 14 different sites. He also serves on the board of advisors at Newton Wellesley Hospital and an associate professor at Harvard Medical School and a principal with CD Healthcare Infrastructure Partners. As a Harvard-trained physician and MIT MBA, Oscar is a rare blend of clinician and strategist, someone who can read an EKG, and a balance sheet. His 2-decade career has been defined by building high-performing teams, driving integration across complex systems, and leading with empathy and precision in equal measure. In today's conversation, we're going to dig into how he first found his way into medicine, what drew him to Mass General Brigham, and how he approaches leadership when building world-class teams. We also get into the power of healthy conflict, the lessons he brings from the classroom at Harvard, and the story of how he turned competition into collaboration with a rival hospital. Get ready. This one's packed with insight on what it truly takes to lead at scale in healthcare. Dr. Oscar, thanks for being with us. How are you today?
Great, Oz. Thanks so much for having me. I've really enjoyed listening to your podcast, and honestly, it's an honor just to be on your show.
I really appreciate you saying that and coming on. I always love to bring in leaders in the healthcare sector. It's an area that my company focuses on. It just feels different, right? When you're helping people and helping people get better. I love everything I've learned about what you've been doing at your organization. I want to dive right into it. So let's do that. You are the Chief Operations Officer for the Congenital Cardiac Program of Heart and Vascular at Mass General Brigham. That is a mouthful. Let's start with how you first got into medicine, though, because I always like to hear the journey. What was this a family thing? Was this something that you wanted since you were at a very young age? How did you get into medicine in the first place?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I have to say it was quite a bit of a journey getting there. It wasn't one of those things that I grew up thinking I wanted to go into medicine. I mean, actually, growing up, it was very different. My father was a bus driver, my mom home, and growing up, I was not really involved with a ton of sports or a lot of kind of these enrichment science things that you hear about nowadays. And actually, my weekends consisted of going to a vacant lot and helping my family literally build a house. And that's digging the trenches after drafting the architectural plans, having the inspector come out after digging the trenches, laying pipe, foundation, walls, et cetera. And that's really how I grew up. And after first doing that, when I was probably 6 or 7 years old, we continued to do that all throughout my upbringing. So if anything, if there was a lesson taken from that is that, quite a bit could be accomplished just with a lot of planning, a lot of hard work. And really, it was just my family of 5 that was able to complete this work. So I can't say any of that had medicine. Definitely, there were some quite boring days there and other more exciting days being on top of a roof trying to help secure tiles to finish a house that we're building. But I had to say it was my brother is also somebody who's interested in science and went to dental school, and I also thought that sounded quite remote for me. And it wasn't until my realization that I enjoyed science. I enjoyed being around people, talking to people, and forming relationships. And after doing an internship in the emergency department at UC Davis Medical Center in Northern California, there was these long shifts that would last for, I don't know, 10, 11 hours. And I realized I was staying there 13, 14 hours at it. I was just so energized being there. I couldn't wait to get back. And it got to a point where I almost couldn't imagine doing anything else. And that's had, medicine for me. And I think this is true for a lot of other people going to medicine. It's a little more of a calling. I think also what made it appealing in addition to the science and connecting with people is that it just seemed to be a career where you could use a lot of who you are, personally, intellectually, if you like thinking about strategy, finance, business development, there's also, a room for you as well too. So it had a lot of what it built in me.
Wow, wow, wow. I mean, every superhero has their origin story, and like just to hear, like, my family, my wife's side of the family, she has a family of doctors. She's not a doctor; she's a stay-at-home mom. But there was like it was a family thing. It was kind of an expectation, and you hear a lot about that. And quite frankly, like medical school is expensive, and so like it's sometimes a lineage that seems to go into medicine, and yet your father was a bus driver, your mom was staying at home, you were doing a lot of manual labor growing up, and you found your way into this path where you're helping people and creating such a significant impact at the different organizations that you work for in this space. So I absolutely love to hear that. What a great story, and how amazing how you've gotten to the point where you're at. So let's talk about that. So that's just such an empowering and amazing story that I love to hear. Now you've been at Mass General Brigham for close to 13 years. You were there back in 2011. I'm interested. What drew you to the organization, and what's changed about it since you first joined? What stands out to you?
Gosh, you could probably have a series of podcasts just to talk about, what's changed. But I'll talk about what drew me at the beginning here. So I had graduated from Harvard Medical School, and I was a pediatric congenital cardiologist at Boston Children's Hospital. And there I developed a body of research at patient safety and quality, just really understanding when things go wrong and how a system can coordinate itself to, remedy this. So again, I was much more focused on the system rather than thinking that, there's a lot of bad actors out there. And the cardiac program at MGH, at that time had fallen on hard times, suboptimal surgical outcomes. Fortunately, there weren't deaths, but there were patients that were languishing in an ICU. The program was shuttered by the hospital. This was literally front page of the Boston Globe, and actually featured on a reality TV show called Boston Med, where one of the medical misadventures, surgical misadventures, was actually televised. So the hospital was looking for a way forward, and I was asked to interview for the position just based on my background in patient safety and quality. And honestly, everything was broken when I got there. There was only one cardiologist, one clinical site, nobody really interested in restarting a surgical program, and really just a lot to be done. During the hiring process, one of the people who interviewed me told me that, gosh, whoever takes this job will be jumping onto the deck of a burning ship. So just to give you a sense. And so I remember leaving that interview and honestly just feeling badly about the organization, because I thought there's nobody who's going to be crazy enough to take that position. And then so I started to think about it and started thinking about, well, gosh, how would somebody fix this? How would you find it org? And I started to ask more questions, and I started reaching out to a few of the other members, not on the selection committee, but other people actually work there, just to kind of understand what was going on and what was left and what was potentially doable, in that setting. And I knew that there was going to be a significant risk, but I thought there was a reasonable chance with the resources and goodwill and the talent that was there. And I think was a big part of it, just knowing that despite what had happened, the system could be addressed and could be adjusted in a way to deliver the outstanding outcomes that the hospital, was known for, and that people were there to deliver it. What they needed was somebody just to really pull the pieces together to find people, who they were, who they are, and what they to bring forward. So it was really a unique opportunity to step in, bring what I had trained for and bring bear the research that I had sorted through and apply it in a real world situation that really had a lot of meaning, not just for me, but for patients and families and health system. And not a uh, common opportunity to have this in Boston. Also, it certainly came with a tremendous amount of risk. I had, by all measures, perfect role, and so stepping into this other role would certainly come with a lot of personal, professional risk as well. So it was really that opportunity and the to grow and build something great within an organization that was forward-looking, really had the maturity to realize when something wasn't going well to change course.
Yeah, I mean, I really love that. I mean, I'm all for clients like being as transparent as possible, both good and bad, and what people are walking into in a new opportunity. But to say whoever takes this job is going to be manning a burning ship, that takes it to a different level than I haven't heard before. And maybe they were just trying to test you and see how much you really wanted the job. I love that you took on a turnaround story. I love that you looked deeper and looked at the resources. You looked at the people and talent in place and thought, okay, this place is in a down spot right now, but there's enough here that the right person can come in and take it forward, right? And it sounds like you went into that eyes wide open. Is that like your nature? Like, are you somebody that has typically wanted to build or do turnarounds or jump into chaos and fix it, or was that kind of out of kind of context for you typically?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. One, am willing to talk to anybody about a situation, even the folks that uh, had worked here previously before my arrival when I was going through there. And the second is I do feel at home in a situation where there's a lot wrong, and I don't mean I like chaos. I don't like chaos. Maybe I really appreciate order, which is why I work to try to generate order out of chaos. But if there's a lot wrong with something, then to my mind, it's there's a lot of work to do, and usually you could find a path yet forward. And so, and it was also, I think, why I developed the body of research that I did. So it was complications after heart surgery, right? Not the most pleasant thing to think about, or diagnostic errors in cardiology. That is when we get the diagnosis wrong. So these are two things that are fraught, can be difficult to talk about, but are ultimately are important to resolve. And usually, things are, I'm fortunate to be in situations where the problems I face are important, and the problems that are important, and that solving them, becomes really important. So in that sense, it is something that did fit very well. That was my character to go into it. I think if everything is perfect and swimmingly, and I'm probably more likely to get anxious than if I know that there's 5 or 10 or 20 things that need to be sorted through.
No, it sounds like those two key areas, you have enough experience and knowledge of how those can be addressed, how they potentially can be fixable over the long term. And it helps to know what to attack and what to put your focus and time on to show dramatic improvements. I don't want to say low hanging fruit because that's absolutely not the case. It's some of the most critical things out there. But at least as long as the devil right? And you can go and you can identify those problems and start to put, checks and balances in place and trainings and different things in place to kind of help implement technology, I imagine that's big. And so I got to imagine that was one of the first things you did. You come in there also probably getting everybody's head right, because I have to imagine, being on a reality TV show for not great reasons, right? And having things shuttered and being on the front page of the news, you probably had a lot of shell shocked people there. You probably had a lot of talent there was wondering what's going on and is this the right place for me going forward? And I imagine you kind of had to get everybody focused and kind of understanding your vision very early on. Let's talk about, the building of the teams, because I know that's something that you're passionate about. Sounds like there was a lot of talent in place. I imagine that you had to augment in the right places. What is your philosophy when it comes to building a team, either internally, externally, whatever it may be? And so what are the characteristics that you're trying to build in one of these high performing teams that you did at Mass General Brigham?
Yeah. So I would, there is a platform or a structure that we think about in patient safety and quality. I don't think this is unique only to medicine, but and it's almost like like different levels of safety. So structure, process, and outcome. And for quality. And let me just peel the curtain back to what that means. So, structure is, do you have the things in the right place? Let's just say that you are, you have an ambulance, right? So let's just say that you want to have an ambulance company that runs emergency services. So the structure, do you have an ambulance? Do you have a way to call an ambulance? Do you have the right equipment? So very much just that. Sometimes in medical office space, equipment to do the right thing, et cetera. Then, is there a process? Great. How does this get activated? Who gets called first? Who gets called second? What do you do? How do you respond to somebody with an asthma attack versus a heart attack? What does that process look like? And then, also feeding into that is who's doing that, who's responsible for the process. And the final thing is outcome. What do you want to happen, at the end of this whole setup? So great. I want the patient with the heart attack to be stabilized in the field and arrive alive in a stable condition. So that way the hospital can take care of them. So I want them delivered safely, efficiently, and quickly. And so when I'm thinking about teams, I kind of think about backwards, and I'll say one other thing. So part of the outcome also gets to mission. That is, what is it that that company is for? And those outcomes help to kind of define what that mission is. So then I think backwards, like, what is it that I'm trying to, who are we? What do I trying to achieve for a different role, different for cardiologist, nurse practitioner, nurse, sonography tech, front door, administrator, et cetera. And then I walk back, and then all the way back to the structure. And then how does this person fit into the overall structure, what we're building? Could this person help out, develop the process that we need to deliver the outcome to really kind of fulfill, who we are? And it really does get back into that. So that's one way I think of it. So really very much, how do we deliver, or can this person deliver? And this is just a very technical way of just looking at that. But in some ways, it has to be, fundamental. That is, sometimes you look at things, candidate by candidate or role group by role group, but really, how does it roll, and how does this person fit into the ecology of what it is that we have built or trying to build? And kind of baked into that, being able to be part of the structuring process are characteristics, right? Kind of need somebody, who can have a conversation. I sometimes there is a thought that, well, gosh, really skilled people might have this flaw or this other thing that might challenge our culture, but in my mind, they're one and the same. I don't sacrifice culture for talent or ability to communicate with each other because somebody's talent in a particular area happens to be, very, very good. Um, and then the other thing I would consider now is these hiring opportunities and team building opportunities to rethink again. What is the outcome and what is our mission? And sometimes, and I'm sure this happens to a lot of your listeners, you have a candidate applying for a job and you realize that they have this whole other skill set can definitely, help you grow, develop, evolve, transform as an organization. But sometimes the job description keeps them in a box, unfortunately. Yes, then you have to have another discussion with HR about the job posting, et cetera. And, unfortunate to be in my role where I could tweak these things where, I, for example, had a candidate apply for a certain, cardiology job, would have done that job perfectly. But upon further discovery, realizing that this candidate, two other skills that I had been thinking about building up and thinking maybe in year 2 or 3 from, we'd look to develop, but now this person is here. Great candidate. And then so I think the other part is, keep your mind open. And again, fortunate that I could change and modify, positions and, as much as it's going to help us out. And that's the part I have to be able to make that argument that I'm just not hiring this person just because, they're a great person or nice, but there's going to be a substantive change to our organization. So so those are a few of the things that I think about.
Yeah, you're the second person. I interviewed Dr. Julie Zhu out in San Francisco. She's in the AI field. founder of a safe AI technology company, and she said the exact same thing. She said that I keep an open mind on the interview, going into the interview, on what the role could be depending on who the candidate is I'm talking to. So of course there's some structure to what you need to get done out of the job, but trying to force people into these boxes that we have on a job description is as much folly as trying to fit them in and say their entire life is told by a resume, because that's not the case either. And being open-minded, understanding, oh, I can add to this role, or I can get more out of this, or I can take advantage of this person's unique skill set. It's something that not everybody has the opportunity or the ability to do, but all the best leaders I know have that in their head. And I'm even thinking about some recent hires for myself where I kind of put it in this box of what I wanted to hire, but the right person came along to interview and I said, oh, now I'm taking this to another level. I'm going to go even a little bit up on compensation and things like that because I'm getting so much more out of the situation. And lo and behold, one of the better hires I've made recently. So I love that. I think that's really smart. You have to be the right person to be able to do that. But I think if you've been doing this long enough, you know what works. You know you can use that canvas to kind of use your imagination on what something could be rather than what it has been. And I think that's a really, really important thing. Another thing that we talked about, and I just love this story that you told me, says a lot about who you are as a leader and as a person. But we chatted about how one of the competitive hospitals in the area was searching for a cardiologist, and you did something super unusual in this scenario. So can you tell us a little bit about that? I want to hear about that story.
Sure thing. So we had a practice in somewhat of in the western part of the state, so located almost about an hour and a half away from us, and we had a presence there. Now it turns out that there was a competitive hospital that had a cardiology group that had really kind of shrunk, over the course of time. And it was to the point where they had very few cardiologists, and it was really impacting their ability to see patients. And so they've had an open position. This open position was there for several months, and then it approached a year. And then I thought, well, why don't I just reach out to them just to get a sense of what it is that they're looking for. It is in a relatively focused part of the state. So to my mind, them bringing on another cardiologist wouldn't necessarily help me because that would just dilutes the number of patients to be seen. And so I reached out to their leadership and just asked what was going on and what their challenges were. And so, as you can imagine, we were competitors, and of course, there's probably some suspicion. But I really went there genuinely just to understand and listen to see if there's something we could work out. And it turned out that they were mostly concerned with the overnight and weekend coverage. That although there was coverage issues during the day and in clinics, that the thing that was affecting their group of people the most and their quality of life was this, overnight and weekend coverage. And so I knew that the group that we had in that local area, their coverage was relatively weaker or lighter, I should say. And that is the number of days that cover and the responsibilities might lend themselves to be able to support this other hospital and our competitor in this way. And so after reaching out with my team members, they were game to help out. And so what we did is we put together an agreement to help out our competitors and to cover the evenings and weekends and really kind of get them, over and through this spot. And the great thing is that one, it did engender a lot of just goodwill. And, they had resources that actually we did not have. They were located in a hospital that had a pediatric intensive care unit, the other and patient services. We were located in a clinic setting, a beautiful clinic setting. But again, it was not a hospital. So that it didn't just help them, but it helped us to have that relationship, because then when our providers were there providing that weekend and evening coverage, they got to know the rest of the team members there in that hospital. So it turns out that, yes, sometimes we have to make a phone call back and forth, or if we have a patient that is there, or if a patient is there admitted to that hospital, and they're looking for somebody or a place for them to be seen after they leave that hospital or name them up. So, yeah, I think a lot of the competitors probably just would have let them flounder, but to my mind, I think it was probably the most efficient solution, thinking that they probably didn't need an extra cardiologist or two at that point, but they just needed something to get over the hump. And the benefit to us was really great in terms of increased collaboration with this team, um, and we got to learn more about our competitors and how they operate. And turns out that we have a lot in common.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I give you a ton of credit on that. Like I work with a lot of large competitive corporate organizations. I don't see Pepsi reaching out to Coke to do something like that from a partnership perspective. I certainly don't see Apple and Google doing things like that. So I got to give you a ton of credit. And like, listen, there was absolutely upside for you and your organization, but you really helped, a lot of the team there that was getting pulled apart from a bandwidth perspective. You helped them solve their talent problem in a way that would have, and I can speak to this wholeheartedly, like would have taken months and thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars to fix. And maybe even then they wouldn't have gotten it right. Right. And so you gave them a scenario and you gave them an option that was a little bit foolproof. So, and then your company and organization was better off because of it. So major kudos to you. Super creative. I don't think a lot of people would have reached out and done that. They might have let things just languish and you didn't do that. So I just want to give you a ton of credit, even though I know there was a lot of benefit for you and for Mass General Brigham. All right. Lastly, I want to ask you a little bit about conflict and conflict avoidance. Now, one of the things I think is a key tenet of any great leader is not letting things, stay under the rug or having backdoor conversations about things. It's about nipping things in the bud and maybe even being out in front and super proactive a lot of the time. So you told me that this has been a really big key for you. And I'm just interested, is this something that you developed later on in your leadership career? Is it something you've always known? And why do you think it's so important?
Yeah. So I'll bring up, when I talk about conflict, it's not necessarily kind of an angry conflict, but sometimes it could be there's an issue that needs to be resolved. And I always feel better if I'm either in the process of resolving something or on the other side of it. And I definitely feel fortunate that that's my impulse. And I'll give you just a couple of different, examples of conflict. And again, just little c conflict. So, I have a staff meeting like every week, really with, multiple role groups. And, there's a few things that we do that are standard, but what I really am looking for, and I ask people, is what do we need to be paying attention for to, and what do we need to be working on? And so really I'm trying to stir up, problems. I'm looking for problems specifically, things that are really bothering people, whether that's, operationally, interpersonally, maybe we're not doing something right, but it's a format where people could bring things up. And what I feel is that when you, have these discussions, these aren't like always friendly, pleasant staff meetings, right? And they're not meant to be. They're meant to really bring up problems. And having so many different role groups part of it, participate in these meetings, is that usually the first thing that could fix your problem is either on the other side of the table or, nowadays, like in one of those square boxes in front of you. And so, and just providing that forum, I think it helps to diffuse a lot of pent up frustration, because I think people, when they either send nasty emails or they're raising their voice in meetings, it's because they feel that they're not being heard, or there's no forum well, gosh, where do I talk about my problem, and how do I do that? And I think having it be understood that, I don't expect everything to be happy during these meetings, is that, we're going to talk about things that we have to address, which usually means that somebody that's bothering somebody about it. So that kind of conflict is good. And I have to remind people that, the point of the meeting isn't to walk away feeling great and happy all the time, but really to feel that you're conveying something that needs to be fixed, within the organization. And so, and so that it doesn't bother me to hear, people being upset. I more upset if I find out that somebody had sat on something or felt too embarrassed or afraid or something like that to say something, and then something happens, right? And fortunately, knock on wood here, that has not happened. But to my mind, that would be a worse outcome, to have things be hidden. And I get and sometimes these meetings I have to break typical um, role barriers and hierarchies to allow people the freedom to talk in a way that makes them feel comfortable. That's a big part of how I see conflict. And the other part is that usually, or at least again, like I said, I've been fortunate that a lot of the conflict that I've been part of, usually there's something important being discussed, or something that needs to be reconciled. So that part of engaging is something that uh, I mean, to me, it feels better than avoiding. So it's almost like I would be more anxious not being involved with some sort of conflict, or than I would with if everything again is going well. I feel like I'm doing something more important where I wasn't there.
Yeah, I'm noticing a theme here that you want to that if things are just like support and maintenance and just kind of keeping the good shot ship lollipop floating, like that's not for you. You want to be doing something of impact. You want to be making a change. You want to be that's what gives you purpose. That's what you enjoy. So I love that. And the thing I think you said there that was so important is it's one thing to be a leader of an organization and love conflict and just be chasing people down, but you have to create the space, right? And the confidence and get rid of the hierarchy, right? To be able to have other people be able to address the conflict they see too and bring it to you, and obviously do it in the right form, the right audience, and the right tone and all that good stuff. But that's the point, right? It's good communication that you're disagreeing about something that's important and critical is typically the case. And you have to make sure that the people below you and even peers feel confident and good in those group settings to be able to bring it up. So I think that's a really key underrated aspect of that.
Finding the right talent for your team doesn't have to be a struggle. Meet Aon Hire, the world's first hiring experience management platform designed to transform the way you hire. Powered by AI, Aon Hire takes the hassle out of every step in the process. From smart resume analysis to customized interview questions, it saves you time, money, and effort. Plus, with real-time insights from every interview, you can quickly identify top candidates, reduce turnover, and stay on budget. And forget about note-taking, Aon Hire takes care of that for you. Ready to revolutionize your hiring process? Visit aonhire.com and get started today.
All right, Dr. Oscar, what I want to do is I want to talk talent because you've already talked a little bit about it from a team building perspective, but I'm interested when you're hiring people for the organization, right? What are some of the things that are kind of tried and true for you or things that you've learned over time? So I want to start here. Core hiring philosophy, bringing anybody into your team or your organization. Anything that comes to mind when I say that?
The biggest thing is, and I think I mentioned this, is that they have to be somebody that you could have a conversation with. That our role is very patient facing, right? And I guess the way I describe it when I'm talking with a potential recruit is, we are a cardiology group. So we address, issues related, to the heart, whether it's a child or an expectant mom who thinks that a heart defect might be affecting, her pregnancy. And so when anyone ever gives us a phone call, somebody's anxious about something, right? It's not that they're calling us just, hey, just to say hello, that there is a parent that's concerned, expected moms that's concerned. There's another physician that's concerned, has anxiety about a situation. And so they're asking us to help. So when patients arrive to see us, there's some degree of anxiety there. And so what I tell people, and this is probably a hallmark of the team, is that when they come see us, our job is to take that anxiety away from them. That regardless of the situation, that we're there to help them. That whether it's good or not good, we're there to support them, to give them what they need, and really to hold their hand throughout the entire scenario. So when you break it down that way, so yes, we're a cardiology team, but these are not just it's only me as a cardiologist can do, but it's really something that everybody could do right from the front desk. How they greet somebody, realizing, yeah, if you're driving into Boston, it's enough to stress somebody out just to get to the parking lot. But if you have a concern because another doctor said your child might have a heart condition, sometimes it's a 3-day-old, that could really be incredibly stressful. It can be stressful for the kid and family. And so everybody along the way has to realize that the care starts, from the word go when they first walk in, that we're there to provide comfort, relieve stress. And again, that's what we do and how we operate. So it's important for me that people have that clearly, an attitude of work in the field like this, but also have that EQ to be able to tune in, understand, listen, pay attention, pick up on cues, uh, and, and really respond according. And that's not just with the patients, but also with your colleagues as well too. Just to understand if somebody's really busy, really stressed, and also if you are really busy and really stressed, knowing uh, that we still have to treat everybody with respect and really kindness. What I tell the group is that we have to provide our providers and our patients with a warm, generous experience, and I think that kind of gives you a sense of the kind of people that would have to work here as well. So that's probably it has to start there.
Yeah, I think it's bedside manner. I think, in terms of being somebody that's able, and listen, I can't even imagine, being in cardiology one, but doing on the pediatric side. I mean, I have to imagine it's so different with young children and dealing with parents versus dealing with adults like who are dealing with heart issues. It has to be such a completely different thing. And to your point, that EQ, that ability to kind of manage those scenarios. Out of curiosity, have you ever met somebody who had incredible bedside manner with patients, but was terrible with the other doctors and administrators? Is that ever been that kind of opposite, or does it usually go hand in hand that you're one or the other?
Yeah, I mean, I have seen that, not in my group, but but along my travels where almost, Jekyll Hyde kind of,
That's crazy. That's funny.
where really just superstar, incredibly charismatic and really just outstanding physician by all metrics. And then, yeah, it was a little bit rougher with some of the other folks, but also learned a lot from people like that as well too.
Yeah. My producer's probably in the back end being like, that describes Oz totally. He's so charismatic with the guests and he's so, no, I'm kidding. I'm not like that. I love our team. I love what we do. If I ask you for a memorable interview experience, does any come to mind? I mean, imagine you've talked to, like, interviewed doctors and cardiologists and physicians and administrators and all these different people. Is there any like memorable interview experiences that you come to mind?
So there was clearly my personal interview experience for the role was quite memorable. And in terms of some of the others, it's interesting because people look to relocate positions for many reasons, and one of them, we had just acquired a private practice, or we're actually in the process of acquiring a practice, and then I spoke with all the cardiologists, individually just to kind of understand, what made them tick. So in a way, this was uh, an interview, but again, couched in the as part of the due diligence for bringing this practice on. And then I remember meeting this physician whose amount of time seeing patients, I wouldn't say it was somewhat less than what I thought. And then in speaking with them, it became clear that the setup that they had really didn't allow them to grow and develop. And I remember this person mentioned how they have both interest and bandwidth. to continue to learn. And the back and forth, it was clear that this person had the wherewithal to really take things on and grow and develop, but was unfortunately in a system or, employed by a group that was small and as a result didn't have the professional development aspect of it. And then I remember thinking, gosh, I'm glad that hopefully this thing will go through. And if it does, we'll be able to provide more opportunity for this person. And fortunately, the acquisition went through. And then this person really, um, almost like a complete career, transformation, really went from seeing relatively few patients to really leading one of the important divisions within my team and really also transforming it, being very technology forward and an appointment at Harvard Medical School and really just being a leader um, in in the area. And so it was memorable because seeing that spark in somebody's eye, and again, this kind of got to that other part of our conversation is just keeping an open mind. It's like, what else could this person bring? But what I liked about this is that this person didn't necessarily have those skill sets yet to actually deliver on this, but it was clear that they had the wherewithal to kind of bring it together and with mentorship and really thinking carefully about this person's professional development, was able to bring that up forward. One of my most memorable, and it's such a great story.
That sounds like that's up there. Like, I think they call that an acqui-hire in technology when you make an acquisition like that, but you bring on somebody that's so meaningful and so impactful that it just takes the value of whatever you purchased to even another level. So it sounds like the person was an incredible talent. Do you have a favorite question that you like to ask in interviews that you find that's really revealing?
It's really simple, and I ask this from everybody, and then some of this is what they say, and some of it's like how they say it, and it should be something that everybody prepares for, and that's that open. Why don't you tell me about yourself? And then so the people who have prepared will talk about themselves as it relates to the role, and then there might be something at the end. But the people who do start off with um, almost like an autobiography, kind of moving on things that really aren't as relevant, then I'm starting to get a little bit concerned um, you know, uh, early on. But it's something that I ask, and then it tells me a little bit about what they're, interested in and, other things. And this is where I could catch some of these aspects of somebody's interest and skill set that might not be in the job description. Right. So, they talked about, different training or different things that they've done. But it's just my opportunity just to let somebody kind of in an unstructured way go ahead, let me know about them and how they communicate.
Love that. What about early on when you first started at the organization back in 2011 or so, and things were a little bit dicey there at the time, and people could, they're doing research and seeing, what was recently on TV and then what was in the news. What is the role, especially at that time for you, of being really transparent about the way things are or the way they are not in the organization? So people coming in kind of come in like you did, like eyes wide open. Like how did you manage that? What was kind of your philosophy there?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I took the role, one of the big risks was I wasn't sure if I'd be able to hire anybody. So let's just be clear. It was the, most, damage for lack of a better word program, in all of New England, and at the time, the smallest. Now we're probably the second largest in New England, just given our growth. So, yeah, I was honest about, who I was, personally and kind of why, I was there. I talked about why I came to MGH, Mass General at Brigham, and it was to the things that we alluded to that these are people of very high quality, people of talent, and that I had the appropriate support behind me to develop the program that's going to be safe, reliable, valued, and I care about people's professional development and take it from there. So that's a lot of what I had started with. So there's a little bit of sharing personally. I did talk about how there are going to be steps to this that, right now, when I got here, there's two of us. So, so the plan is to build this out, what that looks like. And the other thing is to be able to paint and this Future for Change leadership in general, is if you could give people a sense of what the future state is going to look like, and then what their role in that future state is going to be, is pretty important to be able to pull people along. And I think if people understand that they're part of the process, and in this situation, I needed the people I was bringing on to really not be along for the ride, but really part of the drivers of things improving this. So in a sense, it brought on a certain, I think, kind of person, willing to kind of take this on, with their own ideas, feeling that, great, this is an opportunity to also have and have their voice heard, in terms of how to develop the program.
Yeah, that's the thing about being upfront and being clear about what it is you're going to attract the right type of person. You're going to attract the type of person that wants to take that on, comes in eyes wide open, and wants that and desires that. So I think that's absolutely the right way to go. I appreciate you sharing that. All right, let's take it in a little bit of a different direction. Do you have any great books you've read recently or a long time ago that you want to recommend for our listeners?
Yeah, I would say over the summer, there's a couple. One was Can't Hurt Me,
By David Goggins.
by David Goggins. Yeah,
A
yeah.
great book. That book, we actually gave that book away to, I don't want to be misogynistic about it, but we gave it away to all the male employees at MSH for one of our holiday parties. And then we gave one dream to use. I mean, anybody who wanted the books could get them, but it was a very impactful book for me. He's obviously, very hard edged and very hardcore, and you learn about the things that he overcame to become who he is. So anyway, I'm stealing the thunder. Go ahead. Well, why do you love that book?
Yeah, no, it's, for those reasons. And then also it was just interesting how it was just him being authentic and like telling his story of how he got there. I mean, I think a lot of us will do reading, and, take up on a, on a structure, kind of, try to apply the structure, but this is really him kind of growing, himself, and thinking how to move forward. And also just the harsh reality of, yeah, nobody's coming to save you. This is you. And things are hard, and you have to, I think the term to use, callous your mind to push us forward. But the thing that sticks out for me the most in that book is he talks about how that we're only at 40%, that most of us, even when we think at 100%, we're really actually only functioning at 40%. And I think a lot of us who have done something that was really difficult and actually had achieved it, kind of have that realization in a way. It's like, oh, I can do this. And that there's a lot of that capacity. And I think that's a great thing. The other is, by Nate Silver. It is called The Signal and the Noise, which is about predictions and why some go wrong. But just really just fascinating way of just kind of thinking about, predictions, prediction models, kind of being humble, about them, and then realizing that, yeah, if you're predicting something's going to happen 85% of the time, turns out 15% of the time is not trivial at all. And nobody should be surprised if that 15% does happen. So he was a professor at MIT, which is where I had my MBA. So
Nate Silver is great. I follow him. He has a lot of great knowledge in this space. And I have not read The Signal and Noise. I'm going to have to pick that up because I really do like reading about different nuances when it comes to, like you said, like if you just because something's an 80% or something's predictive to happen, we tend to overreact then when it doesn't happen. But at the end of the day, like that's how it's going to happen 2 out of 10 times. Right. And that's not insignificant, particularly when it comes to people's lives or like things like that. Right. So these are the type of things where not all percentages are created equal. Okay. Last question before we go to our really quick lightning round. Tell me, what's some advice that you'd give your 20-year-old self that you didn't know then that you know now?
the one thing I would say is that, whatever you go into, make sure that it could, and if you're looking to help a lot of people, make sure that what you're going into is kind of generalizable, in that way. I think sometimes there might be an over focus on doing this very one specific thing. And there's benefits to that. Don't get me wrong. But I think if you want to help the most amount of people, really kind of think broadly and what is a common problem that most people have. And so that would be one thing. I not sure if I would have taken that advice, even now. But
That's why you have the maturity of and experience of the years to come back in time and tell yourself that. Because
yeah. So, but maybe that.
I love that. I love that. All right, I wanna do the lightning round with you. What we're gonna do is you went to UC Davis, right?
For college, yeah.
What people don't know, one of the best state schools in the country. Obviously, Harvard is a great school. And then for MIT, were you on campus or was it online or was it night school?
Yeah, no, it was both online and on campus.
So I'm going to ask you questions and I want you to tell me of the three, right? Which one stands out to you, okay? So first one, best campus.
UC Davis.
Okay, UC Davis getting in here. All right, next one. Where was your favorite professor?
That is really hard. I'll say MIT.
Okay. Anyone we want to shout out or?
Rodrigo, he was the, this is gonna sound crazy, our accounting.
That's the thing though. Like, I got to tell you, like my favorite class in college was Race for the Presidency. And it was by Barry Goldwater's like campaign manager. And it was like amazing. So, and I didn't certainly go into politics. What was the class that you took that you didn't think you were going to like, but you came out at the end being like, oh, I really enjoyed that?
I'm not accounting. Really, it sounds really mundane, but as he made it great. But I probably have a better answer than that. Probably it was corporate finance, actually at MIT. So that was just, to me, it was what I think like business school is about, that ability to work with numbers and just to really see things just very different. Just have a different perspective. So that was one that I came out liked a lot because in my mind, reached into strategy and a few other things. So.
Okay. Where was your favorite food spot of the three places?
I would say MIT. It's located there in Kendall Square, and there's a lot of awesome food places there in Kendall Square.
Nightlife.
I didn't have much of a nightlife at any of the places. So I'd probably say, let's just say the medical school, located in Boston. So I'll Harvard.
Harvard. Okay, last one. And this is actually just a curiosity question. I know that Harvard is the Crimson. I know UC Davis, I'm forgetting what their mascot is, but I know one exists. What is MIT's mascot? Do they have one?
Yeah, the beaver. It's nature's engineer.
What is UC Davis's?
The Aggies.
Aggies, I knew that. MIT Beavers. I did not know that. I need to get an MIT Beaver hat because I don't think I've ever seen a hat or a jacket that had the beaver on there. It always just says Massachusetts Institute of Technology. The Beavers. That makes total sense.
Yeah.
Dr. Oscar, listen, I really appreciate coming on. It's such a great conversation. I know people are going to get so much out of this conversation. Thanks again. And I look forward to meeting in person very soon. If you're down in South Florida, let me know. And obviously, when I come up to the Boston area, we can get together, grab some coffee.
Oh, absolutely. I love that, Oz. Really, this is just a pleasure. And looking forward to hearing more of your podcast.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much for coming on.
All right. Take care.
Thanks.